Some people die at the age of 25, but aren't buried until they're 75. I'd like for you to consider what that means to you for a second. A few years ago, I was on my knees, surrounded by my own urine, with an M1911 Colt pistol placed firmly against my temple, 1 centimeter away from experiencing death. I could have died at the age of 25. But I don't think that's what Benjamin Franklin was talking about in this quote. So what does the other half of the quote mean? I only understood that when I became 25. When I was already married for 6 years, became a father, or self-employed. I looked down and my abs started disappearing. Life became about paying the bills, paying taxes. I'd make excuses about not going out and socializing, but actually, I didn't have the confidence anymore. I lost something in me. Fast forward a couple of years, I'm 28 now. Just gone through a divorce and still dealing with the ricochet. Kicked out of what was once my family home, isolated from family, disowned by some family members, fleeing to a different city to escape my trauma. But I couldn't escape myself. I lost something in me, in here, and in here. My heart was beating, but I wasn't living a fulfilled life. That's what the second part of this quote means to me. At the same time, my career's taken off. Winning the Pride of Britain Award from Prince Charles, a recognition of my work as a speaker and as a mentor. I make so many public appearances on the news, on panels. I became an expert at not showing people what was going on inside. My internal world was going through what I call emotional atrophy. I was busy helping other people, but I felt helpless. I've done things I'm not proud of. I'm sure we all have. It makes us human. But I was exhausted. I was fed up. I couldn't continue to live my life the way I was. I had to make a decision. And I made a decision to go on a journey of self-discovery. So I started reading more. I attended events and seminars to work on my personal development. I traveled as far as Fiji. Had no idea how far it was. But I remember I was in Fiji, I was in this blue lagoon, my first time ever being in the blue lagoon, by myself, and I just came back from my first experience of having a colonic, which was a very interesting experience. But I'm sitting there taking in my environment. I'm in a place called Namali, and I get into this very reflective state. And it was there I understood what was missing inside of me. I understood what I had to do. I had to reignite my inner passion. Bring back the same Omar who once inspired the whole nation with his weight loss transformation. Or the same Omar who escaped a life of violence, moved to a different city, won multiple awards becoming a speaker and a trainer. I had to remind myself of my own potential. Because sometimes we forget that in life. We get so busy in life, we forget about ourselves. The RIP model I designed to help me, but it became more than just about me now. It became my life's work. I suffered for so long in silence that I created an obsession inside of me to help other people deal with their adversities in life. I'm no mathematician, but I came up with a very simple equation, which is anything minus passion is game over. This relates to our relationships. This relates to our hobbies, our faith. I understood that everyone, including myself, needed to work on passionate consistency. We all start something, we're up here, and then later on something happens. Global survey consultants census-wide state that 84% of 16 to 24-year-olds start a career that they're not passionate about. So people are getting employed by societal pressure to provide, to have a job. But where did earning a living come at the cost of doing what makes you happy? Why are you doing what you're doing? I had a very hard time going from a boy and becoming a man. I'm not quite sure when that happened. Was it when my voice started to break? Or when my beard started to grow? I'm still failing in that area, clearly. Was it when I hit 18? Or when I got married at 19? Became a father at 22? A lot of young men who I speak to, and men who are now men, find that they have the same problem. I struggled, but I didn't communicate that. I knew something was going on with me. I knew something was wrong. I was feeling depressed most of the time. My memory was shattered. I started wearing black all the time, by default. Dissociation became like the coronavirus in my life. But I knew I wasn't going to be defeated, because I knew there was more to me. I didn't come this far to only come this far. The University of California ran a study which states that we have 27 human emotions. So we could be a different emotion every hour of the day and still have a few to choose from. Women, raise your hands if your partner seems to only have two emotions, either grumpy or tired all the time. Now it's your turn. Men, raise your hands if your partner seems to fluctuate between all 27 emotions within the same hour. We see what we want to see based on our emotions. Has anybody else said or done something to someone that they love, but they didn't mean it at the time? I have, many times. So do you think if we had more self-awareness, more emotional intelligence, that could have been avoided? For me, definitely. But you see, I asked the same question to a prisoner who was doing life, and I interviewed him. And his answer was, Omar, fam, bro, I just wish I knew myself better, fam. I just wish I knew how to communicate how I felt. Because something that he did in 10 seconds cost him his life and the life of somebody else. You know, I've been so fortunate to experience so many of life's adversities at a young age, because in dealing with them, I realized something. It's not what happens to us in life that affect us. It's the emotions and the meaning that we attach to it that affect us. I used to be homeless. I was living under a table in a shop. ITV actually did a feature on this. You can still see it online. And it was horrible. I remember the weight gain, the back pain. My highlight when I was homeless was looking forward to going to bed. Why? Because I could escape what was happening in my head. I was very homeless. But for some reason, I felt the need to remind myself of that. Omar, you're worthless. You're useless. You're fat now. Sometimes in life, we do this to ourselves. We beat ourselves up. For what purpose? But one day after Friday prayer, I said, I'm going to change something. I'm going to change what I could be grateful for, which was that I was alive, I was safe, and I had no bills or rent to pay. And this is London, baby. Just by me changing that, I knew and I felt very different. I learned that the quality of our lives is based on the emotions that we feel most of the time. So what emotions do you think or do you feel most of the time? And why? Social contagion describes how we're affected by other people's behavior. More than we realize. People say it's nature versus nurture. I think they're both factors, but not the only factors. But what I had to ask myself was, if environment has an impact in our lives, what if someone couldn't change their environment? Because sometimes the problem is our family or our job. I realized I had to become better at how I responded to the environment. I had to reconstruct myself. I wrote down all my old values versus all my new values. What used to shape me as a person? What were my belief systems versus to now? Because people change, and so do our values. I had to write down who I thought I was, because I forgot who I was. The Department of Psychology at the University of California ran a study on the values affirmation exercise. The results of this proved that just by the participants writing down their values and affirming them, this attenuated the psychological responses to stress and even produced a higher level of productivity in their occupation. Has anybody else in here experienced something called stress? It's not always bad. Stress is what turns coals into diamonds. But when you were stressing out, how much time did you focus on stressing out? What did it start to make you say in your head? When you've messed up as much as I have in my life, you get used to hearing people say negative things about you. And sometimes in life, people grow up in those environments. People are so quick to criticize rather than praise. Now, the problem is, when you're suffering like I was, when you're emotionally weak, those words become your internal dialogue. It got to a point where I knew I had to change the way I spoke to myself about myself. It's what I had to do. Please finish this phrase for me. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but... So, how many of you are holding on to something that someone said to you at some point in the past? Words are very powerful. In the book Emotional Agility by Susan David, she says that on average, every day we speak 16,000 words, but our minds produce thousands more. Growing up, I attended a weekly gathering, a meditative circle, every Thursday evening. I started to do this every single day because I wanted to understand what's happening in here, because I knew my mind was a bit of a crazy place. I then came across something called neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. It's a psychological therapy developed in the 1970s. It's described as learning the language of your mind. Thousands have turned to NLP worldwide, and they state that the way you communicate to yourself affects how you feel. I then came across a company called Headspace, and they're partnered with Stanford University, and they've got over 25 publications stating the positive impact that mindfulness and meditation has on your stress, your focus, and compassion. When I understood that, every day now, when I see my son, I encourage him to do with affirmations. He says, Baba, I'm happy, I'm strong, I can do anything that I want. Because when I changed my internal dialogue, it helped change how I felt. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist, but also a Holocaust survivor. And he realized that amongst his fellow prisoners, those who had a sense of purpose showed greater resilience towards the torture and the slave labor. He wrote about this in his book called A Man's Search for Meaning. And he talks about the crucial role that meaning and purpose has in a human's life. As the quote by Friedrich Nietzsche says, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." I came very close to suicide a number of times. That's how bad my life was. That's how much I allowed myself to suffer. But what allowed me to be here today was understanding my purpose and contribution to this world. On the screen, you'll see a picture of my two boys, Yusuf and Yasin. They don't always share drinks so gracefully, I'll tell you that. But their existence alone gives me purpose. I have a loving partner who's been very patient with me. We've been through a lot together. She's forgiven me through a lot, but she gives me purpose. Sometimes people go to travel and try new things to understand who they are, what they can do. Sometimes being alive alone is enough reason to be purpose-driven. You see, I don't have qualifications higher than a GCSE, and I believe that those were going to limit me. But becoming purpose-driven is what allows me to stand on stages like this today, or speak at universities, even travel internationally to speak at corporate conferences. It's because I had a purpose. So how did I reignite my inner passion? How did I stop myself from killing myself, from being depressed all the time? It was 3 simple steps. I had to reconstruct myself, understand my values, affirm them every single day, change the way I communicate with myself, my internal dialogue, and also find my purpose. Now, the important thing about purpose is we can't confuse our purpose with our occupations. In the pursuit of your dreams or goals, don't forget who you wanted to achieve them for, because they are your purpose. I wanted to end with a story of me and my eldest son, Yusuf. Sometimes he'll come to my house and, of course, we'll play together, but sometimes as being self-employed, we have stuff to do. And I'll, give him some food, put the TV on, I'll go to my office and work. And at some point, he'll come to the office, knock the door, and he says, "Baba, can you play with me?" And I will, and then I'll kind of sneak away. I feel guilty now. But we're busy. And I'll go away and I'll say, "Just give me 5 minutes, I'm busy." 5 minutes means an hour in adult time, right? But this became a pattern. Next week, the same thing happened again. I'm doing my work, he comes in, "Baba, can you play with me?" And I look at him, and he's got these massive big eyes, right? And I want to say to him, I can't, but I say, "Do you know what, let me just change something today." So I pick him up and I put him on my lap. And I say, "Yusuf, I know you're a clever boy, right?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Right, I'm going to give you a puzzle." So on my shelf, I pull out this box of puzzle, and on the front cover is a picture of the globe. That's what the puzzle's of. I open the box and I break it all up into pieces, and I put those pieces into a little hat. And I say, "Yusuf, if you can put this back together, we're going to spend the rest of the day doing whatever you want. Soft play, we'll go anywhere." He grabs it and he runs off. The box says it's for 8+. He's only 5 years old. I'm thinking, right, I bought myself 2 hours right now. 10 minutes go by, he's back. Knocks the door. "Baba, I've done it." And I'm curious. He's brought it in on a little tray. And he's even sellotaped it together. And there's blue tack. Probably even a bogey. So anything sticky he could find, right? And he brings it to me. And he's put it back together. And I'm thinking, how? I said to him, "Yusuf, how did you do it?" He said, "Baba, my affirmation is I can do anything that I want." And I felt challenged. I was like, "It's true, but how did you do it?" He says, "Fine." He flips it over, and he says, "Baba, I knew if I can make the person right, then I can make the world right." On the other side was a picture of a person. He didn't know what he just said. He's only 5 years old. But what he said meant to me was everything. So I'll leave with the question. If you could fix yourself or a part of yourself, what could you go on to change? How could you reignite your inner passion? Thank you.